It's time now for the political analysis of Fromm and Fuller. Al Fromm, former political advisor to President Bill Clinton, and Craig Fuller, former political advisor to both Presidents Ronald Reagan and George H.W. Bush. Good morning, all. Well, Al, the event that we were all waiting for, the Iowa primary or caucuses, I should say, took place this week. Donald Trump came out remarkably well. And we've been talking about this caucus for a long time, about its relevance and what we could possibly learn from about 100,000 Republicans voting in Iowa.
Well, I think one thing we know is that Iowa has become a very, very red state. It's a very rural state. I think what we saw on Monday night was that it is clearly Trump's party, but I think there are also a lot of signs that it's a declining party. So I'd say there are good news and bad news for former President Trump. The good news, he won a majority of the people who turned out, and that was the goal he set. The bad news, that turnout was very low, about 14 to 15%. And the weather was clearly a problem, but to be honest with you, I would think that the bad weather most affected Haley, because she had less of an organization and really depended on people who don't normally vote in Republican primaries for her votes, independents, a lot of them, some Democrats. But for just to put this in perspective, the turnout was down 40% statewide, from 187,000 to 110,000. It was down even more in the 4 counties that have over 150,000 people. Those are the urban and suburban counties where the University of Iowa is, Des Moines, et cetera. And Trump didn't win a majority in any of those. In fact, he was in the 30s in Polk County, which is Des Moines, and he lost Johnson County, which is where the University of Iowa is. He was in the 30s there too. As Haley said, I think Iowa made it a 2-person race. I know DeSantis came in second, but he had bet the farm on winning, and he's not going to be in New Hampshire. And he's yesterday the staff cut started and he's packed. So I think his campaign is quickly unraveling. So Haley has an opportunity, and I think the fact that in the counties in Iowa that probably where the electorate is most like the electorate in New Hampshire, Trump was at his weakest. So that's his opportunity, or her opportunity. I think Trump knows it. He was back on his worst behavior yesterday. Questioning her citizenship, whether she could run because her parents were immigrants, even though she was born in this country, calling her by her birth name, but that's Trump. So as I see it, and I'm not going to dwell on this, we can talk about New Hampshire next week. Haley really has one shot. She has to win New Hampshire, but she also needs Trump to implode, because if he doesn't implode, when they get back to South Carolina in Super Tuesday, South Carolina is not Nikki Haley's state anymore. It's Donald Trump's. Trump really has established the Republican Party as a cult. Tom Etzel had a wonderful piece in the New York Times yesterday on the opinion page that I'd urge our viewers to pick up. It talks about how Trump, to his evangelical base, which is his real base, is almost like a godlike figure, and his mission to them is, as the white Christian vote decreases, and it's now a plurality, it used to be a majority, it's really for them it's to reestablish their hegemony. And so I think I'd urge our voters, our viewers, to look at that column. It's really excellent. Uh, just a couple of more points. There's a poll out this morning by Reuters Ipsos, which says these are warning signs for Trump for the general election. 58% of all voters won't vote for Trump if he's convicted, and 55% of independents. I think that number is beginning to go up because people are paying more attention to what's going on. So I guess what I'd say is, barring an implosion, Trump is going to be the nominee. Everybody who watches Fromm and Fuller knows that I believe this is going to be an up and down vote on democracy. That Trump, as part of his cult mission, I mean, he tries to take on godlike features by saying, I guess I'm not Christian, so maybe I don't understand this, but it's when he says they're not persecuting me, they're persecuting you. I think that has a real religious base that he's going after. In any event, I think there's a pro-democracy majority as long as it's not split. So one of the things I'm going to be harping on, I know Biden is not the strongest candidate. A lot of people don't like him, but he's the pro-democracy candidate who has a chance to win. And so I'm going to be harping for a lot of the year on how important it is to keep down the third-party spoilers.
Well, Craig, you're kind of our Iowa expert here. No one knows the state better than you in many ways. What was your take?
I really think that Iowa does not deserve the analytics that it gets coming out of this election cycle. I'll explain why. I do think one thing we learned, I'm a little more generous perhaps than Al. One thing we learned is that Nikki Haley, who had, I think, like 2 or 3% some time ago, there was able to really run a come from behind kind of campaign. She did get those voters out in some of those urban areas in a caucus day that didn't see that many voters come out. And she really did make it a two-person race because Ron DeSantis spent huge amounts of money, more than anybody else, huge amounts of time, the 99 county strategy, and he didn't win a single county. That has got to send his people into a tailspin. And lo and behold, the very kind of thing that Al and I dislike, but we've seen too much of, the campaign itself is beginning to unravel. People inside shooting at each other, political consultants, claiming to their friends in the media, if only he listened to me, this would have gone better. It just feels like the wings are coming off of that airplane to me. Nikki Haley, though, did have a strong showing. It would have been better had it been number 2, but a strong showing, and that works well for her. But let's turn to Iowa. This is so confounding to all of us who have campaigned there, and I admit that I've seen the corn at all stages of its growth in campaigning there, and that George H.W. Bush in 1988 came in third before he went on to win New Hampshire and capture the nomination. But it's a very troubling state in any national election year. But just consider this, and Al was right. I mean, he mentioned the fact that 15% of registered Republicans, came out. But think of the numbers. There's 752,000 registered Republicans, active Republicans in the state of Iowa. 110,000 came out to vote. Flipping the numbers around to the ones who didn't vote, 85% chose not to vote. I think this is a real warning to the Trump organization because, yes, it was predetermined that he was likely to win Iowa. But it was also a case where supposedly these are his people. These are the people who would support him the most. Well, he got half of the 110,000 who came out to vote. That's half of 15% of the Republican voters. And so tens of thousands literally hundreds of thousands, chose not to even come out to vote for him. And that ought to concern him. He picked up 20 delegates. Well, folks, that's nice. That's good. Half of the 40 delegates that are available, but you have to have 1,215 delegates to win. So he's like about 2% of the way to the number of delegates he needs. But it gave him the right to boast, although he boasts no matter what happens. It gave him a chance to go into New Hampshire having won Iowa. But guess what? New Hampshire doesn't care. They've never cared. That's why we don't have Ted Cruz or any number of other people who won in Iowa serve as president. What New Hampshire cares about is showing up in New Hampshire. And Nikki Haley has been showing up in New Hampshire. Ron DeSantis has not. And I cannot see a scenario in which New Hampshire voters would reward Ron DeSantis in this election. So it really is between Trump and Nikki Haley. And Nikki Haley likes, I think, the come from behind position. And she went in there behind, although she's closed the gap considerably. She went in there with the very popular governor absolutely in her corner. And I think the people of New Hampshire know that if they really want a two-person race to continue, Nikki Haley is the vote to cast. So I think she will make a very strong showing. Another component at this point, which is absolutely critical, is the money. And the question will come out of New Hampshire. Do those people supporting Nikki Haley want to continue to support this campaign, either in the super PAC or donations to her? I suspect they will, because I think she'll either win or come close enough that they'll want to see this challenge to Trump go on probably into March, where you've got Super Tuesday and a lot of states out there. And the only way to handle the campaign when you get into these Tuesday election days that have multiple states is with a big media campaign. That takes money. So the question will be, will the support continue? I can't imagine the support will continue for DeSantis. Why would you put your money there coming at this stage of the campaign? I do hope people continue to make this a two-person race by supporting Nikki Haley, because I think we don't really know what's going to happen to Donald Trump. Some people are suggesting he has health issues. So he certainly is. His temperament seems to not be improving, shall we say. The legal challenges are continuing to mount. So, yes, count me hopeful that Nikki Haley continues to have a chance here. But I do think she does, and I don't think overanalyzing the consequences of Iowa, when only 15% of the people showed up to vote and Trump only got half of those, is really warranted. I think we'll learn a lot more when we see New Hampshire. Al is absolutely right that she goes into South Carolina again, probably behind for sure. And but those voters may change their tune when they see what happens coming out of New Hampshire. So anyway, I think this is still a very much open race. I certainly hope it is. I also think one does have to say that regardless of where this ends up, Nikki Haley has earned herself the right to be a real leader in the Republican Party. And Al and I both talked about who's available to pull the party together. And if it does not work out for Nikki Haley, I think she may well be that person.
Al, I know you want to respond to some of Craig's comments, but we also, as Marylanders, should note that Larry Hogan has finally endorsed Nikki Haley. And I'm sure that's a relief to those who are worried about no labels.
I mean, Larry Hogan did, I guess, endorse Nikki Haley. It was pretty weak endorsement, but I'm glad to see him do that because Larry Hogan was a good governor of Maryland who had strong support from both parties, and so he's the kind of person who could pull, help rebuild this country and help put it together, but he's got to do it as a Republican, and that's the key. Uh, look, I agree with Craig about overemphasizing Iowa. I remember, we didn't have to go to Iowa in 1992 because Tom Harkin was the candidate. And I think President Clinton would say that was one of the great advantages we had in the campaign. I mean, Iowa is different. Caucuses are different. And, but I guess the point I'd make, and Lord knows, I hope Nikki Haley does well and wins in New Hampshire and makes it a long-term two-person race. But this is so much Trump's party now that she's going to really need a lot of help from Donald Trump. Now, he's perfectly capable of giving her that help because, as Craig says, his mental outlook has not been great. Pounded on the table in the courtroom, telling the judge he wants to get thrown out of the courtroom. At some point, as people start waking up, I can't help but believe that most people will say, it's not for us. We've had enough of that. And I think actually Nikki Haley's handled Trump pretty well. I know that, most of my friends and most of the media think she ought to have been Chris Christie, but we saw how far that got Chris Christie. So I think she's handled it right. I think she's, I always thought the best framing of a campaign coming out of Iowa was Gary Hart, where he came in a second, even more distant, incidentally, than Haley was from Trump. And he said, I always knew this would boil down to a contest between Vice President Mondale and myself, contest between our party's past and its future. And, Haley is trying to do that. She's not quite as crisp. But her advertising about running against both Trump and Biden, I mean, I think it's pretty effective. I guess what I'd say, I hope she can continue through March. The longer she goes on, the better a chance something will happen that will allow a change in the nominating process. But I just really believe this is Trump's party. And I think back, I was in the Carter White House when all those polls were very much for Ted Kennedy. And, we always are. My solace always was that if there are only 2,000 people left in America for Jimmy Carter in 1980, they would be our delegates to the convention. And I think that's sort of where Trump is. And so it's going to take a Trump implosion to have a different outcome and to give Haley a real chance.
Greg, you have the last word this time.
I think the one thing I would add is that I'm not entirely ready to surrender to the Republican Party to Trump. I will say that though I think I said this earlier a few weeks ago, the one thing for certain is this is probably and most likely to be the last time Donald Trump as a name is on the ballot. So the party has to look forward. I do think, though, it is time for Republicans who don't want to go down a path with Donald Trump, either as president or as party leader, to step forward. And really, the consequences in the past have been great. He rules more through fear than respect. But at this stage, if you haven't been with him by now, and he wins, you're not going to get anything out of it. And I hate to sound cynical, but people. I remember the people having lists, during the transition of George H.W. Bush, and here's a list of the people that supported us, and somebody close to the president said, "Yeah, well, there's one list of people who supported us before we got the nomination, and another list afterward." The people on that afterward list got some consideration. The people on Trump's afterward list are going to get no consideration whatsoever. So if you're in the Republican Party, and if you would like a path different than the one Donald Trump wants to take us down, I hope people will do what Mitt Romney and others have done and step forward and just express your feelings honestly about what's best for the country. Whether that's enough, and whether those endorsements will count enough for Nikki Haley, I don't know, but I think she's likely to round up more endorsements from Republicans who are respected broadly, and it just may make the difference. But a lot of things can change. I saw going into New Hampshire a incumbent vice president who'd come in third in Iowa who said, "Look, forget the past week. We're going to charge forward." And in a rough interview with then Senator Bob Dole, the tables turned dramatically on Dole, and Bush went on to get the nomination. And a lot of people didn't think that was going to happen. So I look forward to the discussion next week when we're going to learn a lot more.
Well, we do have to leave it there. Al Fromm, Craig Fuller, thank you so much indeed. We will see you next week.